In this module, we introduce the Automatic Flight Control System, or AFCS, on the ATR 72-600. The learning objectives for this module are to understand how the system works, components integrated systems, know the alerts, indications, and failures of the system. There are three major functions that make up the AFCS. See above. Only two of these three functions, the autopilot and the yaw damper, actually maneuver the aircraft. The third, the flight director, only provides guidance information for the pilots to manually fly the aircraft. Another function of the AFCS is the altitude alert system. This system provides the crew with visual and aural indications when approaching or leaving the selected altitude. Finally, unlike many other automated aircraft, there is no autothrottle system on this aircraft. All power adjustments must be manually applied by the pilot. All of the functions of the AFCS are computer-controlled. Two computers actually, CAC-1 and CAC-2. CAC-1 does all of the controlling, and CAC-2 monitors. There are four sources of control inputs for the AFCS. The primary source is the Flight Guidance and Control Panel, commonly called the FGCP, located in the center of the glare shield. The other panel containing AFCS controls is the Index Control Panel, usually referred to as the ICP. There are two of these panels actually, one for the captain and one for the first officer. The ICPs contain the controls to set your reference index for speed, altimeter setting, and approach minimums. The other controls for the AFCS are buttons, and there are two sets of them. One set located on each control wheel, and one set located on the power levers. Each control wheel contains a quick disconnect push button, located on the front side of the control wheel, and a touch control steering push button, located on the back side. Finally, there are two go-around push buttons, located on the outboard side of each power lever. All of the indications for the AFCS are displayed on the PFD. Indications of autopilot and flight director engagement status and mode status, which are most of the AFCS indications, display in flight mode annunciator, located in the upper section of the PFD. Other indications, such as target speed, heading, and altitude, are displayed as part of that parameter's indication on the PFD. For example, the target airspeed is displayed above the airspeed tape, and the target altitude is displayed above the altitude tape. Okay, now let's take a closer look at each of the major functions of the AFCS, the flight director, the yaw damper, and the autopilot. We'll start with the flight director. As we said earlier, the flight director does not control the aircraft in any way. It just provides the pilot with steering indications. As its name implies, it doesn't control, it directs. It does this by using two green command bars that may be selected for display on each PFD, a vertical bar for lateral commands, and a horizontal bar for pitch commands. The command bars are automatically displayed on both PFDs when an active mode is selected. They may be removed from each PFD by pressing the respective flight director button. The source of the information used for flight director guidance depends upon which lateral and vertical modes are selected on the FGCP. If no lateral or vertical mode is engaged, then the flight director reverts to what is called basic modes, which in essence commands you to continue what you were doing when the flight director was selected. The basic mode pitch command is to hold the current aircraft attitude and pitch hold is displayed on the FMA. The basic mode lateral command is to hold the current aircraft heading, and heading hold is displayed on the FMA. By the way, if you were turning when the flight director was selected, the basic mode lateral command will be to either continue turning or level your wings, then hold your heading, depending on your bank angle at the time of selection. If your bank angle is 6 degrees or greater, the lateral command is to continue turning, and the roll hold is displayed on the FMA. If your bank angle is less than 6 degrees, the command is to level your wings, then hold your heading, and wing level is displayed on the FMA, followed by heading hold when the wings are level. If the bank angle is less than 6 degrees, the aircraft activates wing level. Then when bank is below 3 degrees and confirmed for 10 seconds, heading hold is activated. The yaw damper on the ATR-72 is controlled by the CACs and uses a hydraulically powered yaw servo actuator to control rudder movement. It accomplishes 3 functions when engaged: yaw damping, turn coordination, and a rudder trim function. The yaw damper can be manually engaged and disengaged using the yaw damper button on the FGCP and is always automatically engaged whenever the autopilot is engaged. The third major function of the AFCS, the autopilot, is also controlled by the CACs and uses 3 hydraulically powered servo actuators to control the aircraft. When the autopilot is engaged, the pitch, roll, and yaw actuators are connected to the respective flight controls. A pitch auto trim function and a yaw auto trim function are also activated when the autopilot is engaged. The autopilot is engaged by pushing the autopilot button on the FGCP. When initially engaged, the autopilot engages in the active modes being used by the flight director. If there are no active flight director modes, then the autopilot engages in the same basic lateral and vertical modes that we covered with the flight director. Note, as we said earlier, if the yaw damper is not already engaged, it will automatically engage when the autopilot button is pushed. When the autopilot is engaged, arrows on each side of the autopilot and yaw damper buttons illuminate green, and a green autopilot is enunciated on each FMA. The autopilot may be disengaged manually or automatically. Anytime the autopilot is disengaged, either manually or automatically, the following indications occur. See above. Pushing the quick disconnect button on either control wheel clears the message and silences the ARL warning. The most common way to manually disengage the autopilot is with the quick disconnect button on either control wheel. Other methods that may be used to manually disengage the autopilot are shown here. The autopilot will automatically disengage anytime the yaw damper is disengaged and for any of the conditions shown here. The indications for an automatic disengagement are the same as for a manual disengagement, except that the FMA message flashes. A feature common to both autopilot and flight director functions, when engaged, is the automatic calculation and display of a bank angle limit. The CACs continuously compare the current aircraft speed with the minimum high bank speed and automatically display bank angle restrictions if the parameters shown here are exceeded. The indications for bank angle restriction are displayed in 2 places on both PFDs. If the low bank angle limit is not in effect, then the only indication on the PFDs is 2 green tick marks displayed at 27 degrees on the fixed ADI bank angle scale. If the low bank angle limit is exceeded, the tick marks move into 15 degrees on the scale, and a green low is displayed in the FMA